So this morning we are in Genesis chapter 19, and this is the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. If you remember, yesterday we were talking about, Lot was talking to Abraham about he was trying to get God not to destroy Sodom if he found even 10 people that were righteous. And so this is now the story about the destruction of Sodom. It says, "Now the two angels came to Sodom in the evening, as Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he arose to meet them, and bowed down with his face to the ground." Now, I want you to imagine, how did Lot, of all the other people in town, how did Lot know that these two were angels? Okay? And we're going to see here in a little bit that the people of the town did not realize that they were angels, okay? But Lot somehow, Abraham knew that they were angels. When he first seen them, if you remember, when we started reading in chapter 18, it says that when he seen them, he ran to them and he bowed down. He bowed down to the ground. Anytime anybody recognizes someone being a spiritual being or a heavenly being, the reaction has always been to bow down, not to go write books about it and try to make money off of it. They were humbled by it. Many times they were scared to death. Isaiah said, "I am undone, for I am a man of unclean lips who lives among a people of unclean lips." And so, when Lot sees these men, he bows down with his face to the ground. Think about that. His face was on the ground. And he said, "Now behold, my lords." He addressed them as lords, okay? "Please turn aside into your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet. Then you may rise early and go on your way." They said, however, "No, but we shall spend the night in the square." Yet he urged, Lot did, it's talking about Lot, yet he urged them strongly. So they turned aside to him and entered his house, and he prepared a feast for them and baked unleavened bread. Okay, so he knew that, obviously, this was before the children of Israel, before the children of Israel were living, before it was the time of where they made rules about unleavened bread. But he knew to make unleavened bread for these men, these holy people, these angels. He says, "And baked unleavened bread, and they ate." So obviously they had a body, guys. A spirit cannot eat. The spirit is you can't feel it. There is no matter. Does that make sense? Does that mean that all angels have bodies? No, it doesn't. But they can manifest. And something that we should think about is nowhere in the Bible, we're talking about angels, so I have to point this out. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that we become angels when we die. Nowhere. And nowhere in the Bible does it portray an angel to be a female. In the Bible, angels are always manifested as masculine, as male. God is, Jesus was, angels were. There is no such thing that people say all the time and I don't have Facebook anymore, but people like to say, that God got another angel in heaven. No, we don't become angels when we die. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that. Angels are a created being by God. Most of them, and we don't know this, but about if there's maybe different kinds or different heights, but a cherubim is said to be like 18 foot tall. These things are huge. If you really saw an angel in what they looked like, and which angels are spirit once again, but if you saw an angel in what they had, what Isaiah seen, they had 6 wings. John saw a vision of what angels looked like, but Isaiah saw what appeared to be they had 6 wings. They flew with 2, and 2 of them they covered their head, and 2 of them they covered their feet. And they flew around saying, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty." They weren't something that you blinked your eye at and went and wrote a book about and told the whole world that and pretended like you were something great because you supposedly saw a picture of an angel. Those books are lies, guys. Don't ever get drawn in by that stuff. All right, so he goes on. He says, before they lay down, so he made them and they ate. So we know these angels ate, and it says, before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, surrounded the house, both young and old, all the people from every quarter. And they called to Lot and said to him, where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us, that we may have relations with them. Now, the men of the city wanted to have sexual relations with these men. These men of the city did not recognize them as angels, didn't address them as lords. They wanted to commit sexual immorality with them. And even if these men were not interested in doing it, they wanted to force them. That's how depraved and wicked they had gotten. Instead of showing hospitality and love, they wanted to commit sin. And I know people don't want to believe that, but that's exactly what this is talking about. They wanted to commit sexual immorality with these men. They wanted to rape them, literally. And it goes on, he says, but Lot went out to them at the door. He went out to them at the doorway and shut the door behind him and said, please, my brothers, do not act wickedly. Lot knew that this was a wicked way to act. They also knew it was a wicked way to act. But when so many people become so depraved, when we have no standard to live by, the human nature, this is what the picture this is giving us. When we have no standard to live by, we become wicked and depraved. And that's exactly what happened here at Sodom. He goes on, verse 8, he says, now behold, I have 2 daughters. Lot was willing so much, he didn't want this to happen to these angels, that he was willing to give his own daughters. I can't imagine that myself, but he realized that these men were angels, that he had recognized them as angels and had called them Lord, had bowed himself down to the ground. He says, now behold, I have 2 daughters who have not had relations with man. Please let me bring them out to you, and do to them whatever you like. Only do nothing to these men, inasmuch as they have come under the shelter of my roof. But they said, stand aside. Furthermore, they said, this one came in as an alien, and already he is acting like a judge. In other words, they recognized that Lot wasn't born there, that he came to live there. So he came in, he wasn't born from there, he was just somebody that come and move in, and they recognized that they called him an alien. They said, now we will treat you worse than them. So they pressed hard against Lot and came near to break the door. But the men, talking about the angels now, the men reached out their hands and brought Lot inside the house. Brought Lot inside the house with them and shut the door. They struck the men who were at the doorway of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they wearied themselves trying to find the doorway. They had the ability, the power to be able to cause those men, they could have killed them right off the bat. But that wasn't what God had told them to do. They could only go, once again, the angels can only do what God tells them to do. Whether they're dark angels, whether they're demons of Satan, whether they're light angels of light that serve God, or whether they're dark angels that serve Satan. Either way, Satan himself can only do what God tells him that he is allowed to do. And this was what they were allowed to do, to blind them. The reason for this, I believe, the reason for this is because God had a judgment. He was going to rain fire and brimstone down on these people. He didn't want them just fall dead. He wanted that there was going to be a judgment here. He goes on, verse 12, and he says, then the 2 men said to Lot, whom else have you here? A son-in-law, and your sons, and your daughters, and whoever you have in the city, bring them out of the place. For we are about to destroy this place, because their outcry has become so great before the Lord, that the Lord has sent us to destroy it. Now, you guys need to know that Satan is our accuser. Satan, the Bible tells us that Satan is our accuser. He is the accuser of mankind. And that's why God was hearing this outcry. It's not that God doesn't know. He's everywhere at once. He knows everything. But when Satan, when there was such an accusing going on about this bunch, that God decided that he was going to destroy them, literally. Okay? God is omniscient, omnipresent. He knows everything. He's everywhere at once. God can see everything, hear everything. When I say that God can't hear the prayers, I don't mean it that way. God doesn't listen. The Bible tells us that it is your sins that causes God not to listen. To come before God, to be able to talk to God, for your prayers even to be heard, you must have a sacrifice, and you must have a mediator. And if you do not have Christ, you do not have either one. Okay? And the evidence that you have Christ is that you live by, that you keep His commandments. You keep the commandments that Jesus gave in the New Testament. Okay? That you keep the Ten Commandments, because none of the Ten Commandments pass away. Jesus said that. Okay? And he goes on, verse 14, he says, Lot went out and spoke to his son-in-laws, who were to marry his daughters, and said, Up, get out of this place, for the Lord will destroy the city. But he appeared to his son-in-laws to be jesting. When morning dawned, the angels urged Lot, saying, Up, take your wife and your 2 daughters, who are here, or you will be swept away in the punishment of the city. But he hesitated. So the men seized his hand, and the hand of his wife, and the hands of his 2 daughters, for the compassion of the Lord was upon him. Think about this. God grabbed a hold of them, and the compassion of the Lord was upon him. And they brought him out and put him outside the city. They didn't do that for anyone else, but they did this for Lot. And they brought him out of the city. And he goes on, he says, when they had brought him outside, one said, Escape for your life. Do not look behind you, and do not stay anywhere in the valley. Escape to the mountains, or you will be swept away. But Lot said to them, Oh no, my lords. Now behold, your servant has found favor in your sight, and you have magnified your loving kindness, which you have shown me by saving my life. But I cannot escape to the mountains. For the disaster will overtake me, and I will die. Now behold, this town is near enough. Behold, this town is near enough to flee, and it is small. Please let me escape there. I'm not sure what town he was talking about, but he was wanting to escape to a town. Is it not small, that my life may be saved? He said to them. Behold, I grant you this request also, not to overthrow the town of which you have spoken. Hurry, escape there, for I cannot do anything until you arrive there. Therefore the name of the town was called Zor. So the town that Lot wanted to escape to was called Zor. I'm not sure where that is. But they said that they would not destroy the town behind them until he got there. So it says in verse 23, it says, The sun had risen over the earth when Lot came to Zor. Then the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. And he overthrew those cities and all the valley and all the inhabitants of the cities and what grew on the ground. But his wife from behind him looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. Now, guys, there's a lot of controversy as to what that means, but literally, Jesus said, any man that puts his hand to the plow and looks back is not fit for the kingdom of heaven. Okay? Literally, she had longed for her sin. She had looked back because she was longing for what she had. She was longing for the life that she had. And God judged her. He judged her and turned her into a pillar of salt. And then he goes on in verse 27, he says, then he changes the story, kind of changes people here. It says, Now Abraham arose early in the morning and went to the place where he had stood before the Lord. And he looked down towards Sodom and Gomorrah, and towards all the land of the valley, and he saw, behold, the smoke of the land, ascending like the smoke of a furnace. Thus it came about, when God destroyed the cities of the valley, that God remembered Abraham, and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow, when he had overthrown the cities in which Lot lived. And now we have just a few more verses. This is kind of a sad to us. To be honest with you, MacArthur titles this Lot's debasement. In all honesty, I don't know of anywhere in the Bible where it says that a man couldn't have sex with his daughters, okay? To us that sounds very nasty and disgusting, and because God made a law of that after Mount Sinai, right? You couldn't even, you weren't supposed to, but that's exactly what happened here. I'm going to read through it. Obviously in today's world we would not dream of doing something like that. And those that do, we consider them terrible people. But this is what happened with Lot's. And I want you to notice something in this. The two girls here that get pregnant, it was not an accident. It was still God causing the pregnancy. Okay, so let's read through. We just have a few more verses, about 8 more verses. We'll read through it, and I'll talk about that for just a little bit. Lot went up from Zoar and stayed in the mountains, and his 2 daughters with him, for he was afraid to stay in Zoar, and he stayed in a cave, he and his 2 daughters. Now, understand, they're by themselves. They have no men for the daughters to marry. His wife is gone, okay? And these girls, they want to have children, okay? They want to have children, and so I'm not justifying what they do, but there again, for some reason they thought this is what they need to do. Let me read a little further, and then I'll explain some more. Then the firstborn said to the younger, Our father is old, and there is not a man on earth to come into us after the manner of the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and let us lie with him, that we may preserve our family through our father. So they made their father drink wine that night. And the firstborn went in and lay with her father, and he did not know when she lay down or when she arose. On the following day, the firstborn said to the younger, Behold, I lay last night with my father, and let us make him drink wine tonight also. Then you go in and lie with him, that we may preserve our family through our father. So they made their father drink wine that night also. And the younger arose and lay with him, and he did not know when she lay down or when she arose. Thus both daughters of Lot were with child by their father. Now, guys, those 2 girls could not have gotten pregnant unless God had to make them pregnant. Okay? Yes? I don't know if this was a sin that Lot committed. There was no law given at that time that you couldn't be with your daughter. It seems nasty and disgusting to us. But at that time, there was no law, there was no commandment. What is sin?
Transgression of the law.
Right, transgression of the law. There was no law given at that time by God saying that was sin. Okay? That being said, like I said, to us it seems nasty. But the honest truth of it is, not either one of those daughters could have gotten pregnant unless God caused them to get pregnant. Okay? God still has to cause a person to get pregnant. He has to create and form the baby. He could have done anything to stop this. But does that mean that what they did is right? No. When a girl goes out and has sex outside of wedlock and gets pregnant, does that mean because she got pregnant, does that mean it was okay for her to do that? No. Well, she is still guilty of the sin she committed, but God can still take that sin and use it for good if He chooses to. Okay? And something happened in this union. Okay? The firstborn bore a son and called his name Moab. He is the father of the Moabites to this day. Now, what does that tell you about Moabs? The Moabites. Where did Ruth come from? The Moabites. Ruth came from the Moabites, and she was the grandmother of David, King David. What I'm getting at here is God was still in control, completely in control, because from this line of this union with Lot and his daughter came someone that is in the bloodline of Jesus Christ. Now, does that excuse the sin if it was sin? No, it doesn't. But what I'm saying is God was still in control of it. God still caused them to get pregnant, and God still created the baby inside of them. God was still totally sovereignly in control. That's what the most important part to see in that, is that God was still in control. And then he goes on and said, as for the younger, she also bore a son and called his name Ben-Ammi. He is the father of the sons of Ammon to this day. Now I can't give you a line of where the sons of Ammon were destroyed during the time of the taking over of the children of Israel conquered Canaan. But the Moabites, you can know that child that was born to the older daughter it was many years later, but Ruth came from that line, from that union, who was the mother of David. It was actually the mother of Jesse, but the grandmother of David. Okay? Just something to think about. All right. Anybody else have anything to say about that, or had you already thought about that? Huh?
Walker thought about it all.
Walker already thought about it. That is why, guys, it is important to read genealogies. That is why it is important. Although it's a bunch of names that, man, they're hard to pronounce. You have to wonder, my goodness, how can you wrap your tongue around something like that? And
they didn't speak English.
Yeah, they did not speak English. But this is the thing, guys. When you read those genealogies and you become familiar with them, you start putting pieces together and the Bible starts making sense. You don't just need to read the genealogies, so that you can't just get familiar with the genealogies and then know the whole Bible. You need to read it all. You need to take time to study it, okay? Very, very important. Alright, so we will close in prayer, and if nobody has anything to say. Alright, we'll close in prayer and get our day started. Alright, let's pray, guys. Father God, thank you for this day, Lord. I thank you for your word. I pray, Father, that you put in us the need, the longing to, or that we would long to know you more, that we would long to obey you, to tell others about you. Father, I just pray that you open your scriptures to us, that you open our minds to truly know your word and to understand your word. Father, I just ask that you go with us today and help us to get the things done we need to do. Lord, I just want to pray, Father, that you would be with those that don't know you. Lord, I pray for those that we speak to, that we hand out tracts to, that we share the gospel with, that you prepare their hearts, that you would bring the right ones to us, that we can realize the harvest, Lord. Father, I pray that you would be with the church that we will be preaching at in a few weeks, or that you would work that you would, Lord, touch their hearts, those in the town that we will be going to, Lord, that you would, Father, that you would just, Lord, prepare them, soften them, like you did for Jonah at Nineveh. Lord, I just pray that you prepare them to hear your word. Lord, I pray for the Steve Smith family, Amber, her dead daughter. Lord, I pray for my siblings and my wife's siblings, my parents, Lord, that they would, Lord, that you would use them in your ministry, in your kingdom. Father, that you would just cause them to need to know you, that they would draw close to you. Lord, just be with us today and help us to get done the things we need to do. Forgive us where we fail. I pray in Jesus' name.